So, with Cobra Kai having just come out on Netflix, I think it is the perfect time to talk about today's movie. That show is awesome, by the way. I smashed out both seasons in just a matter of days, and I never do that. So yeah, definitely check it out. I also want to thank my friend Jack Schuan for recommending me today's show, and for being one of my few viewers who actually recommends movies for me to review on this channel, so thank you, mate. Anyway, the original Karate Kid is an 80s classic. The second Karate Kid is decent. The fourth Karate Kid is absolute trash, and the remake is garbage. But somewhere in between the good and the bad, there is the Karate Kid Part 3, which is just the right kind of bad to meet the criteria of being, you guessed it, delightfully devilish.
Ho 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 ho, delightfully devilish, Seymour.
Yes, everybody, welcome back to Delightfully Devilish, the show where we discuss films that all at once meet the criteria of being the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm your host, Jukebox Harry, and today we are looking at the final film in the original Karate Kid saga. The Karate Kid Part 3 is a 1989 martial arts drama film, and not a movie that many people are particularly proud of. The production was a mess, Ralph Macchio didn't enjoy being on set, and the only reason the film got made in the first place was because Part 2 was so successful that the studio said to franchise creator Robert Mark Kanan, we're going to make a third movie with or without your involvement. So rather than having someone else play around with characters he created, he decided to try writing a third movie. The third movie ended up being such a mess that he refused to involve himself at all with the fourth one, the next Karate Kid. I don't blame him at all for that. The film has the same writer, director, and stars returning to the franchise, so as far as technical proficiency goes, it technically passes, but when it comes to narrative, that's where the film buckles. And before I actually get into discussing the film, obviously, yes, I do have a history with karate, as I've mentioned many times before. I've been teaching karate for 5 years, I've been training in Goju-Ryu karate for 14 years, which is the style that influenced the Karate Kid, so today's film I'll be discussing from the perspective of not only a second dan black belt, but also from the perspective of a film critic. The Karate Kid Part 3 opens with extended flashbacks of the first two movies, depicting Daniel LaRusso's triumph over the Cobra Kai dojo from the first movie and Sensei John Kreese's fall from grace in the second movie. As a result of his violent attitude towards his students, Kreese has become an outcast from society and lost his once successful business. Why would you have Karate Champion printed in a Vietnam War photo? Like, I don't think that's a thing that would have actually gotten done. I can only assume that John Kreese had it done to boost his own ego. Torn by his failure, he goes to visit an old friend.
Ah, Mr. Kreese, good morning, what a surprise. Some coffee.
Wow, that is some of the worst dubbing I've ever seen. Meet the film's villain, Terry Silver, who lives in the same house from Blade Runner and House on Haunted Hill. Terry is the founder of Cobra Kai Karate and John Kreese's friend from the Vietnam War. And already, this strikes a chord with me. When I was 10 years old, I was going for my orange belt, which is 2 steps up from white belt in my style, and I had to go to the parent dojo of my karate club to be graded, which was run by a man named, you guessed it, Terry. I approached him as he stood behind the counter in his dressing gown, and I said, Terry, when does the grading begin? He looked me in the eyes and chastised me for not calling him sensei, which, by the way, was absolutely a complete accident. I barely ever spoke to this man in my life, and I was, well, 10 years old, so natural mistake. Anyway, even though I succeeded at the grading, Terry refused to give me my belt for 3 weeks as a result of accidentally calling him Terry instead of sensei. Now, this should be something that he was hoping to have disciplined me and make me feel respect for him. No. I was 10 years old. When everyone else was getting their belts in class, I was struggling not to cry because I felt humiliated, and I didn't get it for 3 weeks simply because of a mistake. 14 years later, I'm now teaching karate, so I have clearly succeeded on that. But not because of that. No, he really hurt me as a child. So, any karate instructor named Terry, just watch out. They don't have a track record of being good. Also, in real life, actor Thomas Ian Griffith was 13 years old when the Vietnam War ended.
Look at this. 10 years ago, nuclear was the preferred waste. You could dump it anywhere. Now, everybody's a detective. I'm lucky if I make one deal a year without being indicted.
Terry Silver runs a toxic waste disposal company. You know, that sounds like something a supervillain would do.
It's been 9 months since I've had a student walk through my doors.
9 months? What are you, pregnant? Terry tells Kreese that he's sending him to Tahiti while he comes up with a plan. And the reason this made its way into the plot is because after the script was hastily written, Martin Kove actually couldn't commit to being in the film because he was starring in a science fiction series called Hard Time on Planet Earth, which for the record was cancelled after 1 season.
I'm gonna get them for what they did to you. They made you suffer. So I'm gonna make them suffer, and suffer, and suffer, and when I think they've suffered enough, then I start with the pain.
I don't know what's more jarring about that line, the excessive repetition of the word suffer, or the fact that suffer and pain aren't synonymous in his mind.
Cobra Kai
Never dies.
Meanwhile, Daniel and Mr. Miyagi return from Okinawa to find that Daniel's apartment has been sold, and thus Mr. Miyagi is out of his job as a janitor. And Daniel's mother is off taking care of her uncle who has emphysema, so he stays with Mr. Miyagi.
And when is Kamiko arriving?
She's not. She, got this great job with a dance company in Tokyo, and I guess she just couldn't say no, so.
With every single new Karate Kid movie, they always have to write Daniel LaRusso's girlfriend out of the script. There needs to be an actress who is willing to date Ralph Macchio on screen.
The day you step off the plane, you're the biggest dojo operator in the valley.
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
I bought 20 locations today. Yours, 100%. You are back, my man. Bigger and badder than ever.
Bought 20 locations before you even executed your plan? What could possibly go wrong? Terry Silver talks like a cartoon character, foreshadowing his motivations very explicitly with a comic book style of villainy.
When I'm finished with that kid, he'll be begging me to be his teacher. And you know what he's gonna learn from me? Pain in every part of his body and fear in every part of his mind.
Make his knuckles bleed.
Hey, I like that! Oh, I like that, Johnny! I'm gonna use that!
Thomas Ian Griffith hams it up ridiculously for his role in The Karate Kid Part 3. It's kind of hilarious, but remember, he wasn't meant to be in the film. Part of Terry Silver's evil empire is that he has a variety of cars to use in different schemes. But he's also a cigar chomper. The same year as this film, the Karate Kid animated series came out. I can't help but wonder if Terry Silver was written for that, because he feels like so much of a cartoon character.
Karate's bad, boy. Perfect.
I love it when a plan comes together.
Daniel surprises Mr. Miyagi by spending all his college money on the lease for a new bonsai store, which has always been Miyagi's dream. But when you think about it, Mr. Miyagi could have easily sold those trees out of his front yard. That way he could have done what he wanted for a living, and Daniel could have attended college. Like, did no one think that through?
What do you mean you can't dump it in Borneo? Who in Borneo knows what chloride sludge is? Just do it. Do it. Call me when it's dumped.
Classic supervillain, right?
The grand jury, what do you intend to do about them?
Bribe him as usual.
Jesus Christ, every single thing this guy says or does is just designed to show you how evil he is. Have you figured out that he's the bad guy yet? The film doesn't seem to think so.
Mike Barnes. Dennis will take care of your training. Snake takes care of everything else. You get a weekly draw in a car. Any questions?
Yeah, when's lunch?
Remember on the phone you said that if I come down here and I beat this Larusso kid in the All Valley tournament, that you give me 25% ownership in your new dojos? I'm afraid I'm gonna need 50%.
Holy shit, there's two of them.
Although the first two Karate Kid films were teenage fantasies, there was a degree of realism in them, which is what made audiences connect to them. Here, we have Daniel LaRusso now going up against two cartoon supervillains. It doesn't get much further away from reality than that. After this scene, you just have to abandon any hopes for realism in this threequel. And it wouldn't be a Karate Kid movie without the obligatory tracking shot of them training against nice scenery.
I opened that letter, you know, the one that came today from the All Valley tournament. There's a new rule this year. Under the new rules, the defending champion only needs to fight in the final match. Isn't that great?
No, that's not great. That's inequality for one thing, because then you haven't earned the same shot at the grand final as everyone else who would have fought their way through the tournament. But also, that's not something to be proud of, because you've just been carried straight to the end with a handicap. In the tournaments that I've fought in, this happens when there's 3 people competing in one division, one person advances to the final round while the 2 others have to compete in the semi-final. But here, see, I don't even know if this is real. It doesn't feel believable to me. But then again, American karate, well, American, you know, the rules don't apply to a lot of things over there. Also, if Daniel's the defending champion, this film is therefore set exactly 1 year after the first Karate Kid, which would make Daniel 17, not legally old enough to secure a lease for the bonsai store. And if for some reason he's miraculously become 18, then he wouldn't be able to enter the All Valley Under-18 tournament.
This is not making me happy.
Daniel-san, if karate use defend honor, defend life, karate means something. If karate use defend the plastic metal trophy, karate no mean nothing.
I get where he's coming from about not using karate to boost your ego, but there is definitely honor in defending your title. Miyagi's ideology in this film is really half-baked.
Oh, here's your pen. Before I forget. And, if you have a minute, just in case you change your mind, here's the application.
Play it subtle, all right?
I mean, I'm sorry if I made it seem like, you know, we had to do it today. You know, we have some time.
Play it subtle.
Daniel goes across the street to a pot store to meet the new love interest.
Daniel LaRusso.
Jessica Andrews, sorry.
Hi. Well, is that you?
Oh, yeah, that's me.
What happened to the guy who lost his head?
Elizabeth Ann Rooney happened to him, the traitor. So.
Traitor! Did you sign it? You sign it? You didn't sign it.
No.
He made it pretty clear that he wasn't going to sign it. And also, you've been gone, what, like 5 minutes? Cut him some fucking slack, Daniel.
Just like a bonsai live inside the tree. Ants are live inside the you.
Yeah, well, the only thing living inside me right now is a lot of confusion.
That line must have sounded so great on paper. In person, not in the slightest.
And I have the chance to be the champion again. All I have to do is put my signature to it.
Or match to it.
Match to it?
Aye. Then you watch the confusion disappear with the smoke.
Oh, that isn't smoke. It's steam. Steamed from the steamed clams we're having. Steamed clams.
Terry comes around to spy on them. Daniel concedes that he doesn't want his karate to revolve around a title and decides not to enter the tournament. He burns his entry form, which distresses Terry, who has decided to hide in the chimney. Jesus Christ, nothing this guy does or says is realistic in the slightest. He's both a supervillain and this film's comic relief. The new romantic interest, Jessica, tells Daniel that she plans to give things a try with her cheating ex-boyfriend, which is never a good idea. But actually, this is because in real life she was 16 and actor Ralph Macchio was 27. He didn't look it, so that comes as a surprise. But yeah, they couldn't be a romantic couple because it would have been illegal. Now, I think the idea of Daniel having a female friend who isn't a romantic interest is fair enough, because too often women just get pigeonholed into being just the girlfriend or the wife in a lot of films. But also, they only made that decision after casting a 16-year-old. I don't get why the producers just didn't recast the role with someone who is legally of age. Like, Robin Lively is okay in this film, but you're not going to remember anything about her.
I've been here for 2 months with absolutely nothing to do, and I haven't even met any friends.
Well, meet your first friend.
All right.
Oh, friend! Oh, new friend! Oh, friend! Please be my friend! Oh, friend! Oh, friend!
Fuck you.
Yeah, how is it that Daniel only has one other friend at this point? Terry's goons come by.
We heard you weren't entering the All Valley this year. Is that true, Daniel?
Where'd you hear that?
Said, is it true?
Yeah, that's true. So what?
So, we'd like you to reconsider.
Daniel refuses and they leave. The next day, Terry comes by to visit.
John Kreese of the Cobra Kai dojo was our school's #1 student. Word reached us in Korea only 2 months ago about what happened last year at the tournament. My teacher sends his apologies for John Kreese's dishonorable actions.
Terry claims that Kreese died of a heart attack, then just leaves, and then we're back at the store.
I got stuck with all this macaroni and cheese.
Macaroni and cheese? Hey, you know what I like.
Forget about it.
What? The downstairs? What is that?
It's a dance club.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's great. It's got live music. It's for the, it's for the night before you go back home. I figured, it'd be a nice going away present, so.
Oh, Daniel, that is so sweet.
Literally, the only thing that's changed about her character when the script was rewritten is simply the fact that she doesn't kiss Daniel. The rest of the film continues to characterize their relationship as if it is a romantic one. Terry's goons come back. When Daniel repeats his refusal to compete, they begin trashing the store, and then things get violent. While Daniel and Jessica disable the first two goons, Mike manages to kick Daniel's ass. And like this film's decision to repeat the generic subplot from the first film, Miyagi returns to repeat the time he kicked a bunch of American teenage asses in the same film. But even though this is repetition, I don't care. Seeing the frail old Mr. Miyagi fight off Daniel's enemies is always a pleasure to watch. Only problem is that it barely lasts all that long in this scene.
I'll be back, Rooster. I'm gonna kick you, man. You hear me?
They also steal all the bonsai trees, assault, vandalism, theft. Yeah, these are all things that you could very obviously report them to the police for. If they don't get arrested, at the very least, it would get them barred from a karate tournament. But I guess in the universe of this film, we have to pretend they're safe from the cops. Maybe because they're white. Daniel and Jessica's relationship is a massive drag. The film never actually develops their friendship to the point that it's all that significant because they're written to be a romantic couple who can't be romantically involved. We know that she's moving home at the end of the story and getting back with her ex-boyfriend as well, so there are no stakes in their relationship. Instead, their entire dynamic is literally just them trying to be cute the entire time despite never being destined to go anywhere.
You know what I think?
What?
I think when the tide comes in, the ocean fills up the bottom down there.
I think you should have been played by someone who was over 18. The two go searching for an Okinawan bonsai tree that Mr. Miyagi planted down there, hoping to save it for a large fortune and save his business. They abseil down, which is a little disconcerting seeing that Daniel doesn't appear to have any prior experience with doing this. They fetch the tree but drop it down into the water, and after fetching it, tragedy strikes again.
How you doing? Heads up, Danny boy!
How the hell did they know where he was? Faced with the threat of being trapped down the bottom of the cove as the tide comes in, Daniel reluctantly signs the application. The goons help them back up, and just in case you were wondering why Daniel didn't sign the application and then just not turn up...
Don't even think about backing out, man. Because then I'll really be pissed. And this? Well, this'll all seem like a happy memory compared to what I do to you.
So Kanan did actually think that one through. Mike also snaps the tree, and despite being forced into the tournament, Mr. Miyagi refuses to train Daniel. And this doesn't actually make any sense. In the first film, Miyagi trained Daniel to fight in the tournament because he was being harassed by people who were constantly threatening his health. In this movie, they're doing it all over again and a lot more aggressively. Even though his ideology remains intact, Daniel's been forced into this and he doesn't really have any other option. And Miyagi just stops supporting him for some reason that is never explained. I really don't get it.
Hey, get out of here, man. I signed it, all right?
What'd you call the cops for?
Yeah, what'd you steal the trees for, huh?
No proof.
Huh, so even though the cops have been called on him, he's going to continue to assault them and get away with it because the cops don't want to do anything about it? Yeah, I guess we know who the true villains of this film are. All cops are bastards. Except you, Sean. You're a good one. Terry comes by to apparently rescue Daniel and show off the effectiveness of the leg sweep technique. He offers to train Daniel at the Cobra Kai dojo. And when you think about it, Terry's plan relies on the idea that Mr. Miyagi wouldn't train Daniel for the tournament. How could Terry Silver have known that Mr. Miyagi was not going to train him for the tournament? In the first film, Mr. Miyagi literally started training Daniel in the first place solely to go up against Cobra Kai in that exact tournament. Seriously, I mean, you could make the argument that even if Mr. Miyagi did continue to train him, that he would have poached him another way, but still, like, this all just feels way too coincidental. Daniel goes to Mr. Miyagi to ask him to help learn to sweep, but of course, Mr. Miyagi has a different idea of sweeping. The entire characterization of Mr. Miyagi in this film is very faulty. He has a vaguely fair point about not wanting Daniel to enter the tournament at the start, but now that Daniel's been backed into the corner, he's just not being a supportive person at all. And the fact that all he can do is joke about things now suggests that he's been reduced to being a one-dimensional background character with more comic relief than understandable motivations.
Listen, I gave your offer some thought, and
And
if it's not too much trouble, I'd like to take you up on it.
it'd be an honor.
It begins!
Desire, devotion, and discipline. The first two I can't give you. The last one I can, but you have to be willing to receive it. Are you, Mr. Larusso?
Sure.
The response you're looking for is yes, sir.
Shouldn't that be yes, sensei, Terry? Terry starts encouraging Daniel to be more aggressive and attempts to implement that into his leg sweeps. Daniel pushes himself to the point of bruising his foot.
Who is it?
Who else is it going to be? Daniel makes a very conspicuous attempt to hide his injuries. Mr. Miyagi comes in to help heal them, but Daniel keeps the source of his injuries a secret, creating a rift between the two.
What am I doing?
Hope confusion in the soul, Daniel-san. Miyagi heart empty without you.
This part I don't get. Mr. Miyagi cares so much for Daniel but never explicitly explains to him why he won't support Daniel when he's been backed into a corner. The character motivations in the film are thoroughly undercooked, though Pat Morita gives a typically powerful performance again. Both him and Ralph Macchio got nominated for Golden Raspberry Awards for their performances in this film, and I don't agree with that at all. I'll agree that the characters sucked and that maybe Daniel LaRusso did get a bit whiny, but their performances are fine. Terry continues teaching Daniel, encouraging him to become more violent and aggressive. Daniel becomes so injured from his training that later he steals more of Mr. Miyagi's healing substances, but when he spills them later on, you can see that they've been changed to just plain water.
Look, I'm sorry if you don't like it, but I got problems, okay? And if you're not gonna be part of the solution, just don't give me a hard time about it, all right? Okay, you got it?
For all the poor writing in this film, when Daniel yells at Mr. Miyagi, it's hard not to feel something. The appeal of the characters in the story lingers long after their best tales are behind them. And Daniel's fury begins to peak. Later that night at the dance club, Terry just so happens to be there, which Daniel isn't the slightest bit suspicious about. Terry offers to pay one of the boys there to antagonize Daniel, and without hesitation, Daniel punches him square in the face.
Come on, we gotta get out of here. Come on. Hey, where's that guy with my money?
That's what you get, dumbass.
Daniel immediately becomes overwhelmed with regret, going to Jessica's to apologize to her before she leaves town. She encourages him to be honest with Mr. Miyagi and then gets written out of the story. And that is the end of her entire arc. She doesn't even stay for the tournament. Great characters. Daniel returns home to open up to Mr. Miyagi.
I feel like your tree. You know, the one that I wrecked? I feel just like that. I feel like I'm falling apart.
Sounds like you're really trying to force an allegory in there, Daniel.
Hey, look at that. It's gonna make it, huh?
Hey, make it because I have strong root. Just like you, Daniel-san. Inside you have strong root. No need nothing except what inside you to grow.
Okay, so that did actually turn out to be a pretty good allegory, but it was blunted by Daniel's foreshadowing. Daniel goes to end things with Terry and declare that he's not going to defend his title, and Terry reveals his true intentions.
We have an agenda here, Daniel. It's really very simple.
At this point in the story, I realized that Terry Silver being evil, that should have been a plot twist that we weren't previously aware of. The reveal that Daniel had been manipulated into going down a dark path would have been a whole lot more powerful if we weren't aware that this was the intention from the beginning.
So just forget about it, all right?
Martin Cove's face actually has a lot of rich character to it. Rewatching the first Karate Kid the other night, me and my boy Josh paused on this one moment because just look at the guy's face and that gesture. Like, it looks like Doctor Strange has just told him how to stop Thanos' plan in Avengers Endgame. Mike begins harassing Daniel again, chasing him out of the dojo. But then...
Well. Look who's here. The big war hero.
Earlier in the film, Terry credits Kreese as being a war hero who saved his life in Vietnam on several occasions. How can you go from that to literally using war hero as an insult? Miyagi quickly disables Mike, and then John Kreese comes at him. And after the disappointing conflict earlier, the Karate Kid Part 3 actually delivers on the ass-kicking Mr. Miyagi in this scene. After kicking Kreese's ass, finally Terry comes at him, but even he's no match.
I'm gonna open Cobra Kai dojos all over this valley. Hell, I might even teach for free. From now on, when people say karate around here, all they'll mean is Cobra Kai karate. John Kreese's karate. You won't even be a memory.
Revealing your entire scheme to the heroes of the story. Yeah, every single superhero story or cartoon ever should tell you that doing that is not going to end well.
How Miyagi trained you.
Why? Because now you have to stop supervillains? Because when Danyu's life and well-being was in danger, that didn't matter, but now that you've got a chance to be a hero, suddenly that's okay? Why? It's literally never explained. I don't think the writers even knew what was going on here. There's 17 minutes left in the film at this point, by the way, so any training Daniel gets would have to be on a level of Deus Ex Machina, but instead they just practice kata by the ocean side for just over a minute. In fact, the film's remaining running time spends more time showing them putting the bonsai tree back where it was originally planted in a symbolic reflection of Daniel returning to his roots. And then we just cut right to the tournament. So, what did Daniel learn?
A good question. For another time.
It's my pleasure to announce my partnership with the greatest karate man I have ever known, Sensei John Kreese. Together, we are about to open a chain of Cobra Kai dojos, where young people can come and learn the same values I've learned. Honesty, compassion, and fair play.
It's hard to imagine anyone getting excited about a dojo that's promoting these values. Yes, they are very important to the dojo, but it's terrible marketing. You want to be talking about things like discipline, self-confidence, things like that. That's not a good hook.
Remember the game plan. First you win a point, then you lose a point. Keep the score 0-0. Pulverize him for the full 3 minutes. Then in sudden death, you get the point, we win. I want him to experience pain. First he suffers.
Then he suffers some more.
Literally just outlines every single thing about his plan for the audiences to understand. Yeah, people in the real world, they do not talk like Terry Silver. And his plan is terrible. Mike can beat up Daniel anytime and the police obviously aren't going to do anything about it. Here he has an entire audience to watch him physically abuse someone else. That is not going to reflect positively on the Cobra Kai dojo. Also, if you're actively going to try and push forward into the sudden death where it's one-hit victory, you're giving the hero an obvious chance to win. Very obvious. So after not even earning his way to fight in the grand final, suddenly Daniel is fighting against competitor Mike Barnes.
Light contact is allowed to the body, and I do mean light, Mr. Barnes. No face contact is allowed. Any violation of the rules will result in a penalty point.
I want you to take note of those rules. Light contact is allowed and no punches to the face.
Face this way, bow. Face each other, bow. I said bow.
Oh, see, refusing to bow in tournaments can actually get you disqualification. I've actually had some students of my own who have naturally forgotten to bow at certain points in tournaments and they've been disqualified as a result. He should already be out of there. Mike lands a point and then costs himself a point with a penalty blow. Next he throws a whole bunch of techniques, all of which Daniel is able to dodge, but none of which he blocks. Mike scores another point and then assaults him again.
One more violation and you're disqualified.
Take note of that rule as well. Mike then continues to assault Daniel several times, which all fail to count as either points or contact warnings for some reason. God damn it, the rules, they just don't apply here.
I love it when he pounds.
That didn't come out right.
This is more fun than I thought.
The referee was literally in the way there. Why would you use that take? After getting attacked several more times, the timer runs out, pushing things to sudden death because apparently nobody is following the rules.
Mr. Miyagi, it's over! Nothing is over!
It's okay, lose to opponent. Must not lose to fear.
Yo, I'm afraid! I'm afraid of him, alright? I'm afraid! Alright? You wanna hear me say it? You wanna break me down? Alright, I'm afraid!
Focus. Tell us how your best karate is still inside you. Now time, let out!
I find that answer vague and unconvincing.
And then Mike delivers a wonderful monologue.
Come on, get up! Get on that line! Get on that line, Larusso! You're worthless! Your slum teacher's nothing! Get up, man! You're no champion! Get up! You suck, Larusso! You suck, man! And your teacher's karate shit! You hear me? It's shit! You're a joke, Larusso! Your karate's a joke! And your teacher is worth shit! He's nothing! He's nothing! And you're nothing! I own you! I own you, Larusso! Where's your little jab teacher now, huh? He's a phony, man! He's a fake! And he didn't teach you nothing! Your karate shit, you hear me? Get up, get out!
That entire soliloquy of repetitive, generic bad guy talk, that was all improvised by Sean Kanan, which I'm really glad about because I wouldn't want to believe that the guy who wrote the first Karate Kid, and Taps for that matter, would have ever written dialogue that bad. In the sudden death match, Daniel inexplicably starts performing kata, which makes no sense. For one thing, the film wasn't building towards the use of this at all, and for another, kata is done to follow a specific patterns of techniques. It's a good way to practice several techniques, but it has little application in the real world. I think the film wants to make the argument that Daniel doing kata allows him to focus, which is technically correct, but it's way too tenuous to help his situation. Whatever, he stops doing the kata, which allows Mike to go in for the attack, but Larusso is able to disable him and land one hit, winning the tournament and foiling his enemy's plan. And Daniel gets called the first two-time champion in All Valley Under-18 karate history, even though that was literally the exact title that Johnny Lawrence was fighting to defend in the first film. He won twice. He was going for a third victory. But of course, that was back when you actually had to fight your way to the end and not get carried to the grand final by a handicap rule. Daniel and Mr. Miyagi embrace as the film ends on a fairly mediocre song called Listen to Your Heart, which really pales in comparison to the main songs on the soundtrack to the first two movies. Is The Karate Kid Part 3 a good movie?
No.
Ever since I was young, The Karate Kid Part 3 felt very weird and strange to me, and I could see a lot of problems with it, but it's only as an adult that I can see just how many problems there really are. And to discuss them without monologuing for way too long, I'm going to have to disregard the recycled plot points, the continuity errors, and the issue relating to Daniel's age. The central issue with the film boils largely down to its characters, and perhaps the most loud example of this is the film's villain, Terry Silver. Actor Thomas Ian Griffith is frequently cited as the highlight of the film due to his charismatic villainous performance, and I'll agree with that. The problem, however, is that the character is way too cartoonish to be a villain in a series which is meant to be rooted in relatability and realism. Johnny Lawrence was a relatable villain because we've all known bullies before. Chosen from Karate Kid Part 2 was a bit less believable, but he fought for his uncle and for his own honor. Terry Silver is an evil millionaire who runs a toxic waste disposal company, and that is a character destined for a superhero movie, not a Karate Kid film. Everything from his over-the-top mannerisms to the way he keeps explaining his very elaborate scheme through ridiculous soliloquies is almost laughable. Thomas Ian Griffith is the most charismatic cast member in the film, but his character has no place in this franchise, and his right-hand man, Mike Barnes, is motivated purely by financial gain, a love of violence, and his own ego. He's as thin as the paper that he was written on. Even the heroes are weak. Daniel LaRusso hasn't matured a day since the first Karate Kid, perpetually lost and angry without any sign of the wisdom that Mr. Miyagi has fought to instill in him. And not once in the film does he ever use either of the techniques that led him to victory in the first two movies. Neither the jumping crane kick nor the two-handed drum technique make their way into the film, even when Daniel is backed into a corner. And Mr. Miyagi's motivations are never understandable. Initially, when he discourages Daniel LaRusso from defending his title in the tournament, he makes some sense, but when Daniel is bullied into competing and threatened with further violence if he doesn't participate, Miyagi turns his back on him, only to change his mind when he discovers that it was all part of an evil plot. The entire relationship between Daniel and Mr. Miyagi is fractured in the film, but it's never fleshed out, and the dynamic between Daniel and his not really but a bit girlfriend adds literally nothing to the film. It might have added something to the film if they were romantically involved, or if they developed on the idea that she was a good friend to him, but instead the filmmakers just cast someone underage and hastily rewrote the character without thinking of how it might impact the story. All the characters in the film remain trapped in a state of one-dimensional decline until the last 10 minutes of the movie when Deus Ex Machina strikes and turns everything around. 95% of the film is incredibly slow until the end tournament is just dropped on everyone out of nowhere with no substance behind it. And the tournament itself is the messiest scene in the film. There is no consistency with the rules. Daniel doesn't earn his place to be there because he automatically passes to the grand final. Everyone cheers while Mike very obviously physically abuses him again and again, even when they wouldn't cheer for Cobra Kai doing that in the previous year's tournament. Nobody seems to notice the very obvious flaws in Terry's plan, and then Daniel stops it all through an illogical and tenuous use of kata which lands him 1 point. And that's literally the only point he lands in the entire film after he's been pummeled again and again and again through the tournament. And with Mike being able to get away with physically abusing Daniel all the time even when the police have been called, what's to say he won't continue to do so after the tournament is over? Now that Daniel's cost him so much money and glory, he's going to be more furious than ever. Actor Kanan has actually said that he would be willing to return to the role of Mike Barnes in Cobra Kai if offered the opportunity, so we may actually get an answer to that question. But furthermore, what happens to Miyagi's business? The entire bonsai tree business subplot gets forgotten about the film halfway through with no clear sign of where it was going to end up. Director John G. Avildsen refers to The Karate Kid Part 3 as a horrible movie, a pale imitation of the first one, and a film which was hastily written and then sloppily rewritten. Robin Mark Kamen himself said that he wanted to make a prequel focusing on Miyagi's origins if he was going to make another Karate Kid, but the studio didn't want that. So instead we just got this mess of a movie. Yes, the director seems to be working with passion and the actors seem pretty dedicated to their roles, the fight scenes are okay and the musical score is great, but this movie, it's just one big mess and one sequel too many. The Karate Kid Part 3 gets 2 awful threequels out of 10. It maintains the efforts of a talented cast and a very earnest director, but the screenplay is a cesspool of plot holes, one-dimensional characters and cartoonish villains, all which completely betray the roots and heart that the series was built upon in the first place. And that does it for today's episode of Delightfully Devilish, you guys. If you want to see more episodes of this show, please hit that subscribe button. If there are any ideas for movies you want me to discuss on this show, please leave them in the comment section below. Otherwise, until next time, I've been your host, Jukebox Harry. Octagoni Rate. This.